Hello my friends and welcome to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. With a fresh wipe upon us to ring in the new year, we've also got some fresh new weapon builds to talk about. And in this patch, I'm happy to say that a few of my favorite SMGs got a nice little facelift and some new parts that are thankfully available pretty early on from level 2 traders. So that's what I'd like to cover here in this video. The first month or two of the wipe are, in my opinion, the best time to be an SMG user. Simply because players haven't stockpiled enough good armor and helmets to make them feel like pea shooters yet. Their lightweight and small size also make them great options for the early game because our strength skill isn't too high yet, so you have lots of room for loot in your bag without getting slowed down too much. On top of this, SMGs tend to get access to their suppressors earlier than most rifles, so you can run quiet and not alert the entire map every time you need to pop a scav who interrupts you. To start this one off, I want to take a look at the MPX, which got a pretty substantial update in the 0.16 patch. The devs teased a visual update for the MPX a while back, and I have to say that they did a really good job making the MPX look quite a bit nicer than it did before. And the new animations for inspecting, checking the mag, and all that stuff are really cool. So good job dev team at making an already sexy gun look even nicer. On top of the visual update, we also got a nice selection of new parts for the MPX, and thankfully some of the best ones are available right from level 2 Peacekeeper, letting you make a really nice suppressed MPX with solid stats and a pretty good price that's finally better than the default MPX SD. First up for this build, you can swap the default MPX barrel for the new Ronin Arms 6.75-inch MPX SD ported barrel. This is sold by Peacekeeper level 2, and it allows you to attach the Ronin Arms MPX SD 12-inch suppressor. This combo gives you really solid recoil control, even better than the 14-inch barrel with a suppressor, and it isn't too expensive. Next up, I swap out the default MPX handguard for the new MPX Gen 2 8-inch M-Lock handguard, which looks quite nice and adds some extra stat bonuses onto the build as well. You need some M-Lock rails to add parts onto the handguard, and for this build at level 2 traders, I like to use the Zenit RK4 grip and an X400 flashlight. For a sight, you don't need to worry too much about height clearance on the MPX, but at low levels, I tend to just use the MRS red dot sight anyway on this thing, and you can also add some backup iron sights if you want for the +2 ergonomics. Finally, for the stock and pistol grip, I just leave the default parts on, since the ergonomics is already pretty high, and the default MPX stock actually has pretty good stats, so it doesn't really need replacing until you can get some of the better ones at Peacekeeper level 3. This build ends up with 32 recoil and about 60 ergonomics, and in my opinion it might just be the best 9mm build available at level 2 traders now, with a reasonable price and a great suppressor. Next up, let's take a look at the other SMG that got both a visual update and some new attachments in this patch, the PP-19 Vityaz. The PP-19 has always been a great early wipe gun, and now it finally has some of its own unique parts, so you're not just stuck with the same AK handguard from the budget AK builds that you're running anyway. While it might not pack the same fire rate as something like the MPX or the Uzi PRO, it's a cheap build, it uses ammo efficiently, and it has a very stable recoil pattern, so it can sometimes be easier to land shots at mid-range. The PP also has one of the cheapest suppressors available, so overall it's a good budget suppressed build. To start this one off, I'm using one of the new handguard gas tube combos available for the PP-19 in this patch, the SAG MK1 M-Lock handguard with gas tube, sold by Mechanic level 2. I think they actually did something cool with these new parts that really helps the PP-19. This part actually has a better recoil reduction stat than most AK handguards that the PP-19 would normally use, and it has a big ergonomics boost. With these new parts, the PP-19 has access to solid recoil reduction without messing with the meta for the full-sized AKs, so I think they did a good job with the stats on these parts. Next, I just used some M-Lock rails to attach an RK4 grip and an X400 flashlight onto the handguard as well. For the suppressor, I like to run the Vityaz suppressor from Mechanic level 2. It's really cheap and it gives about the same recoil stats as any other option. Next, you can add the Vityaz rail dust cover to attach an optic, and on this build, I'm just running the Walther MRS as a cheap sight for the early game. Finally, I also usually add on a Tapco saw pistol grip for the extra ergonomics, but it is optional. You can replace the stock with the PT1 from Skier if you want, but I don't think it's really necessary. I would recommend adding the GP25 recoil pad though if you have it unlocked from the gunsmith quests. One more thing I would like to mention is that you can also get the second new handguard for the PP-19 off of scavs very easily, and it is worth using in my opinion. This thing has slightly lower recoil reduction, but it actually changes the reload animation when loading from empty, and it speeds up the charging handle animation quite significantly and basically lets you do the HK slap on the PP. So not only does it look quite nice, but it's actually quite a practical upgrade as well, and almost every scab with a Saiga 9 has one of these handguards with a foregrip on it. So just keep an eye out for those and you basically have infinite amounts of the things. The next build I want to cover in this video is a suppressed Uzi PRO Pistol, which has kind of replaced the MP9 as the bullet hose of choice at level 2 traders. While I will always stand by the MP9 as one of my favorite weapons in Tarkov, the Uzi PRO Pistol variant basically does all the same things with an extra 2 bullets in the mag, so it's a pretty solid choice as either a primary or a secondary weapon alongside a bolt action. The default Uzi Pro is only about $200 from Peacekeeper level 2, and then with parts from Mechanic level 2 you can upgrade it quite a bit. First I swap out the barrel for the Pike Arms threaded barrel so you can add a suppressor. From level 2 Peacekeeper, I just like to use the SRD9 suppressor, which is fairly cheap and has pretty good recoil stats. Next, I add on the Uzi Pro A3 M-Lock brace, which basically serves as a foregrip, but also has space to add one of the 0.93-inch M-Lock rails for a flashlight or a laser like the X400 that I'm using here. For the last major part on this build, I like to add the Uzi Pro SBR stock, which has great recoil stats and makes it much more stable to shoot. Finally, you just need to add a sight, and on this build, I'm running the Delta Point Reflex sight, which is one of my favorites on SMG builds. With almost 1100 RPM, this little bullet hose is a great pick for clearing buildings. And since mags and ammo for it are really cheap, you can kind of fire and forget with this thing and barely worry about how much ammo you're burning through. For the final build in this video, of course, we can't talk about early wipe SMGs without taking a look at the UMP-45. Basically every wipe since it's been added to the game, the UMP manages to kinda dominate the early wipe. It's cheap, it has access to a good suppressor very early, and most importantly, it uses 45 match FMJ, which is kind of amazing as far as early wipe ammo goes. While the UMP does have a very slow fire rate compared to other SMGs and a fairly low mag size at 25, match FMJ ammo just totally makes up for this, packing huge damage and pretty reasonable armor pen for less than $1 a bullet. Combine all this together and you've got a gun that absolutely shreds scavs. It'll black every limb pretty much in one shot against PMCs, and it can do serious damage to armor with a few repeat hits because of how much damage it does. Overall, the only thing really limiting the UMP is range and accuracy, so while it might fall short against rifles at mid-range, it really shreds in any up-close fight, and it's really efficient with ammo. Also, the basic UMP build is incredibly simple. First, you just need to get the OEM UMP suppressor from Peacekeeper level 2, which just slides right onto the default barrel. Next, add on a Zenit RK4 grip and a flashlight onto the rails that come with the UMP, and that's literally it. You just need to add a sight and it's done. The tricky thing about the UMP though is that you do need to add kind of a taller sight to see over the front iron sight. So I usually just stick with the Walther MRS sight until I get EOTechs unlocked, which can easily see over the front ring and has a great field of view. After that, just grab a few mags of match FMJ and you are good to go. And that basically covers it for the builds in this video. Personally, I really love what they did with the MPX and PP-19 in this patch, and I can't wait to get my hands on the new 50 round mags for the PP and see if those make it any better in the mid to late wipe. I'm also kind of excited to see what the higher level MPX builds are like, but I have a feeling that this MPX SD build with the Ronin suppressor will still be the best option. In any case, I hope you enjoyed, and let me know what your favorite early wipe SMG builds are down in the comments. Thanks for checking out the video. I have a link to my Twitch channel in the description if you want to come say hi, and until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City, everyone.